Hi, welcome to Empower Her. My name is Priya. I am the host of this podcast. So, Empower Her is a podcast from women for women. And basically, I aim to highlight stories and experiences of women professionally and personally through this podcast to inspire and uplift other women in different areas when it comes to their careers. So I invite women from different roles, from different industries, from different leadership styles to talk about how they have grown and what were their lessons, and hopefully other women can learn from it and grow from those experiences. So I have a very special guest with me today, Bhumika. Hi, Bhumika. How are you?
Hi, Priya. Really a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So, Bhumika, I will ask you to do a quick intro about yourself. Just introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Bhumika Arora, as you mentioned. I am of Indian origin. I'm currently based in Oakville, Ontario, in Canada, and I'm an entrepreneur. I run my own coaching and consulting business called Ruffday Services, which is based out of, well, I work from home, but I work primarily online. So I'm really excited to be here to talk to other women about entrepreneurship and just everything that we deal with.
Yeah, amazing. So a little bit about your background as well. So before you started your own venture, how did your career start? Where have you had experience before you decided to go into your own coaching business?
Yeah. So if I'm going as far back as the start of my career, I actually grew up in a small Southern African country called Zambia. And as lovely and vibrant as it is a small country. So I actually studied finance, a very different field from what I am in right now. I was working in management consulting, and I actually did start a small venture of my own back home. That's the time that I realized that I really want to be an entrepreneur at some point in the future. But I didn't know enough about it. The technology space in Zambia is still pretty traditional. People like to do things the same way as they used to, 50 years ago. So I decided to move to San Francisco, the Bay Area, to learn more about the tech industry, the startup industry, and I did my MBA in San Francisco. After which I worked for a number of different startups and large companies in a field of customer success. Now, I do feel like my MBA also helped me transition into the field of a more client facing role. Even though I was doing that in management consulting, I feel like it really helped me hone in on what my skills are and what I enjoy doing, as opposed to doing accounting and finance.
Mhm.
Um, so that's what I was doing for a while in the Bay Area, and eventually, many Indians probably or many South Asians probably have the story. I think any immigrant might have the story of having visa issues. So that eventually brought me to Canada from the U.S. Trying to find my footing in North America, and I was working with a large ed tech company that's based out of the US, but in Canada, I was managing the clientele in customer success, and I was managing the team here. And I eventually moved to another startup that is based in Canada. So it's been a journey. I have been in the customer success field for about 15 to 17 years, I guess, give or take. The reason I say 15 to 17 is because officially it's probably
Yeah.
more like 15, but I've been
Yeah.
doing it even before it was customer success.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing, and eventually, I just enjoyed the coaching and consulting side of it so much. I decided to venture out on my own and exercise my entrepreneurship muscle here.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds amazing. And obviously, a lot of people, I feel like, they do have, this dream of theirs that, everybody who is working in a corporate job that, eventually they want to start their own business and, you always like kind of envision yourself like doing that in the future. But I think it takes a lot of courage to actually go ahead and do it. um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, I mean, that's amazing that you were able to do it, and you have started your own venture. So let's talk a little bit about that. What kind of led you into actually doing it? Like, obviously you thought about it, but was it that you decided to do it, you left your job and you were like, okay, I'm gonna do this, or did the situation happen? Because yeah, that happens sometimes too.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I always felt like I was a little bit more of an entrepreneur, even when I was in the corporate job space. So I always operate as if it's my business, right? Like I'm so dedicated towards it, and I always do that. And sometimes I just felt like that was not really appreciated in
Mm,
in the corporate space. I'm sure many people have
mm,
experienced this, right? So
mm,
so I was like, all right, let me try this on my own. And it was hard to imagine when would be the right time to do it. And I think that's probably the question that most people ask is, yeah, I want to be an entrepreneur, but when do I actually take the leap?
mm,
And I will say two things for this. One, you have to be in a place where you are financially stable enough to do it. And I think
mm,
that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. They always talk about the passion, and it's great to have the passion. But the
mm,
problem is that it takes time to actually
mm,
start to make money. So
mm,
you can basically be guaranteed that you won't make money the first year. Like, unless you're already doing something, if you're going to leave your job and you're going to start an entrepreneurship venture, you probably won't make money at least for a year, if not more, right?
mm,
Um, my suggestion would be try and dabble on the side if you can. I will say that my job was very, very demanding, that I couldn't dabble on the side. I was doing a lot of coaching at work, and I was doing some coaching even before that. So, yes, I was coaching, but not from the perspective of a business.
mm,
So, I did have the coaching skill. I wasn't doing it as a business officially until I left my job.
mm,
So yeah, so that's the first thing, is just, make sure that you're financially stable. You have the support system to do this.
mm,
And secondly, just do all of the research beforehand, because the things that will take up your time are going to be things that are not things that you enjoy, right? It's going to be a bunch of administrative work, like registering your business, what it takes to file taxes, like all of those things that sound really, really boring.
mm,
Make sure that you do all of that research in advance. All of the glamorous part of being an entrepreneur will come eventually, but you need to do the groundwork for making sure that you have all of your I's dotted and your T's crossed. So yeah,
mm,
those are the two things that I would say: is make sure that you're stable, financially stable, you have the support system around you, and
mm,
you've done all of your research on what it actually takes to establish a business.
mm. Yeah, definitely. Um, and then, obviously, when you started doing your own venture, initially, as you said, obviously, it's not a pretty experience. It's it takes time. It's a lot of like ups and downs. So initially, maybe in the first year or two, what were like the biggest challenges that you had to go through?
Yeah, I am actually only in year two at this point. So the first year was definitely the most challenging. I would say even like a year and a half, right? So the first 6 months, like I mentioned, I honestly was just doing like admin stuff, like registering the business, figuring out what my brand is, figuring out what I'll be doing, figuring out if I need to be online on social media and how to get clients. Um, so I think that that's sort of like your first year is a lot of experimentation, um, and learning from others. So meeting people who have already established themselves, asking them good questions. I would really, I've benefited from so many mentors and coaches myself, that have shown me the way and told me like what to try, what not to try. So I think that that's sort of the first year. And then the second year is sort of like when you're probably like figuring out who you really are as a business, right? It's like, all right, now that we've done this, what's actually working, what's not working. One piece of advice is use data analytics, right? Whatever it is, like whatever is working, what is not working, even if you're not doing it like through an app or, some sort of tool, Even like psychologically, you should know what's working, right? You're like, hey, it seems like this works better, this doesn't work. So make sure that you're documenting it in some way, either in your mind or on paper. Definitely suggest doing it on paper.
Mhm.
Sorry, I hope I answered the question.
No, yeah. You
Yeah,
definitely did. Um, I think obviously we have been talking about your business, but do you also want to share with the audience what do you offer? What kind of services do you offer through
yeah.
this venture?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of experimentation took place, as I mentioned. So I am doing a lot of coaching for the customer success field. If it's a very specific niche, but really it's for folks who are already in the SaaS business area that are in the customer success field or are in some sort of post sales motion, even sales. I do some coaching for sales as well. So anything in the customer journey that takes place, anything from the first touch of the customer until that they stay on to be a customer. That's sort of what I coach for. So any individuals who are trying to get career coaching in the space, but also companies that are doing that.
Mhm.
So what does that mean? So because customer success is such a new space, a lot of companies don't know how to establish teams that are
Mhm.
in customer success. A lot of these companies also need help with another space that I'm also coaching for and consulting for is international GTM. So go to market is hand in hand with customer success, honestly.
Mhm.
So when a company or business is trying to go global or trying to expand into a new area, into a new region, what are the things that they should be considering for business. So
Mhm.
having started two businesses myself, and also being in a strong space for establishing good relationships with customers, these are the things that I advise and coach on.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Um, and then why customer success, I guess.
yeah,
When
good
did you
question.
decide to offer this service?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I kind of fell into it. So I always enjoyed the customer facing side of things. Even like I mentioned, when I started in management consulting, a lot of the work is like, reports and spreadsheets and things like that. We're doing a lot of data analysis, but I used to love the feeling of solving problems for our customers. So when that aha moment takes place where they're like, oh yeah, this actually solves our need, you're like, wow, this feels amazing. And I think so I already kind of set myself up for that, right? Saying I want to be a problem solver, um, and I want to make people feel good. So coming from the business perspective, customer success has the chance to do that quite a lot, where you're really making sure that your customers are happy. So I sort of fell into it. After my master's, I was really looking for some sort of like sales. I was looking at like business development. I was looking at a lot of different sales type and operational roles. And the first role that I actually got with a startup was the title was account management executive.
Mhm.
And I think people don't know what to call it, right? So they're like, yeah, account management executive, you're going to be managing accounts, customer accounts. And then eventually I actually asked once we started working, I was onboarding customers, making sure that they're happy. I was like, hey, I spoke to the founder. It was a small company. So I spoke to him and I was like, hey, can you change my title to customer success manager? Because that's what I'm actually doing. And he's like, yeah, that makes sense. so
Mhm.
so he changed it. So ever since then, it's been something that I'm very passionate about and growing. And it is a very niche space. So I think that there's
Mhm.
a lot of people out there that are in the sales marketing, like the
Mhm.
generic
Mhm.
umbrellas. But as you
Mhm.
get very niche, I think that customer success is such a small community. It's such a niche space, and I think that there needs to be more information on how to measure and how to do
Yeah.
better at it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I relate with that very well because obviously I have a background in sales and customer
Yeah.
success. And that's something that I have definitely, gone through as well, where, I was doing sales and eventually I moved into like an account management role. And then afterwards, I discovered like, okay, there is like these positions coming up. which sound like almost like account management, but are more
There
like
are a lot of similarities. Yeah. Like
yeah,
there's a lot
yeah.
of overlap between the two. It just depends on how companies do it.
Mm-hmm,
It's funny. Like last year when the economy was down, a lot of customer success roles actually converted back into account management roles.
mm-hmm,
And now
yeah.
they're going back to customer success because there are
Mm-hmm,
certain nuances, right? There are things that customer success do that are more strategic,
mm-hmm,
especially when it comes to enterprise level organizations. Um,
mm-hmm,
that account management does not do. Account management is more about like contract renewals, and they're still more salesy.
mm-hmm,
Whereas customer success is like, all right, I'm gonna like really understand your business and be your trusted advisor.
mm-hmm,
So I think that's where the nuance comes in. So if you're really strong with relationship building, and really strategic and ask consultative questions to your customers, to try and fix their problems, I feel like customer success is a better role.
mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I hope I didn't interrupt you when
No, no, no,
you're
no,
talking
no,
about this.
no, 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 no. Yeah, I think another part was also, I think what I would recommend to, any listeners who are maybe like looking for a job in customer success is, something I started doing later on was like when I was interviewing for like a customer success role with different companies, I would ask them, okay, how do you define customer success? Because I just discovered that every company defines it differently. Some companies would be more like, oh, okay, this is a complete sales role. Yes, we call it customer success, but it's a sales role. It comes under, you know, the sales department. In some companies, it actually comes under like operations. And then their like whole strategy is different with it. So I would advise always asking, the company, like, how do you define customer success? What are your expectations with this role? What department it comes under? Those kind of things do matter. So yeah.
That's such great advice, and honestly, it's something that I also advise anybody that I'm coaching is really understand what the job description is because you'll go in with certain expectations,
Mm.
and you might end up doing something like support, right? Doing tickets, and that's not customer success. Or you might end up, like you're saying, doing something like very sales heavy role,
Mhm,
leading new business, which is not what customer success is.
mhm.
It's about existing customers and growing
Yeah.
them. So yeah, you're totally right. You should definitely ask which department it falls under, who's your leader, who's going to be your line manager, as well as what is the
Mm,
actual definition for the role. And
mm,
another good question to ask is also, why did the need for this role come about? Because
mm.
that will then tell you what they're actually looking for versus what the description says. Because the description can sometimes be copy pasted, right?
Yeah.
But then when you
Yeah.
actually ask, like, hey, what was the need for this? And then they'll say, well, we really needed people to like answer like technical questions for
Mm.
customers reaching out. And you're like, red flag, that's support. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's amazing advice, and that's a really good question to ask in interviews. Um, so when it comes to, as you mentioned, international go-to-market strategies, and when you advise startups on that, what are some key elements that you consider when advising them on it? I guess.
Yeah, I think this is pretty relevant for just being like a South Asian woman sometimes is like the cultural aspects of things. When companies are not thinking local, when they go across different geographies. So, say an American business is expanding into India, for example. There's a lot to consider from how people do business in India, which is so different from North America. It's more like a family atmosphere. You really need to understand, like, culturally how people operate. It was funny, like we were running workshops in India, and you know, normally nobody starts work before like 9:30, 10 a.m. in India versus, but then they also finish late in the day, right?
Right.
Like they'll work
Yeah.
till like midnight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas in North
Yeah.
America, it's like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. Like you have
Mm,
to be ready to go, right? So
mm,
so one is just like cultural nuances, how to do business in different areas, and that trickles into other areas also. Like I'm just talking about a very simple thing, but it really talks about like how you form partnerships, who you form partnerships with, who are the people who have abilities to make inroads into the those geographies. Sometimes
mm,
geographies are very heavily regulated by government, for example, so you have to have a government partnership. So things like that you have to consider. And I think
Mm,
the other side of it is just really process and people, right? Like who to hire, how to hire. So how does your sales org look when you start selling something in a new market? How does your brand awareness and messaging operate in that market? So those are things to consider.
mm,
There's a lot of things in there, but it
mm.
definitely goes into like people, process,
Mm.
a lot and heavily.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, and then when it comes to startups, what are some common challenges, that they go through when it comes to, especially when it comes to like customer success? Um, what have you seen in your experience?
Yeah, customer success is an interesting one because a lot of startups will start to establish customer success a bit too late.
Mm,
So what they'll do is like, and rightly so, right? Like you're when you're a startup, your first focus is you just want to get your first customer, and
mhm,
sales is the focus. So you're more like a sales-led organization. But as you start to understand your core business and what your offering is, you really need to have a customer success team kind of come in and work closely with those customers so that you establish your ideal customer profile,
mhm,
which means that that will inform who your ideal customers will be going forward. So
mm,
that's one thing that I recommend for any startup is establish your ideal customer profile, and
mhm,
start to build your customer success team early on.
mhm,
And then also obviously hire the right people. So another thing that I see in startups is because of budget constraints or just like bad planning, they'll hire a very junior customer success manager to kind of lead the customer success motion without a leader that is, mentoring them, and that doesn't
mhm,
work well. So you probably need to hire somebody more senior that
mhm,
will inform the strategy for post sales and
mhm,
CS as a whole.
mhm,
Yeah, and so that's another thing. But there are so many nuances. I think that
mhm,
when startups start to establish a post sales motion,
mhm.
that we can definitely talk about
Yeah.
if we reach out.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, something that I've observed as well when it comes to, any company who is like maybe starting off with like developing a customer success department is, or even like other companies as well, where, maybe customer success has been there for, some time, but something that I've seen is a very common struggle is KPIs. They are able to like establish KPIs for like sales. Okay, we know what we're doing here, but with customer success, there's a lot of, I would say changes. Companies, tend to change a lot of their KPIs. They're like, okay, is this working? Is this not working? And I mean, that's a good thing. Obviously, you need to experiment and change and pivot accordingly. But I definitely see that there's um, I would say like a confident way to say that, okay, this is a good KPI for customer success. So a lot of companies do kind of struggle with that. Have you seen that in your
Oh yeah.
experience?
Oh,
Yeah.
totally. And it's not just startups that struggle with KPIs, larger businesses too. Yeah, it's funny because customer success you'd think by now has sort of found its bearing. But no, a lot of larger companies that have really large customer success teams are still trying to figure out KPIs, the ideal KPIs or OKRs, whatever you want to call them, some sort of
Mm,
measure for customer success.
mm,
I will say it is a little bit of trial and error because
mm,
you could try to follow another company or a business that is doing something similar and use
mm,
their KPIs for your business. But if you're really early on as a startup, you're still trying to figure out your core product offering and what that would be. And so
mm,
as you pivot that, you have to remember to establish your ICP again. Like you have to go back to your ICP and rethink that, and then that will also inform what your KPIs are going to be, right?
mm,
So if your ICP changes, your KPIs also change. So it's a constant sort of evolution of um, redoing things as you pivot, not just your product, but
mm,
also your internal measures of what that success looks like. So yeah,
mm,
so KPIs for sure. I mean, there you might have heard the one of the most common ones is like NPS, which has
mm,
gotten so much flack over the years. because it's not a really good measure. But there's like sometimes companies feel like they don't have anything else besides NPS to measure customer promoter score or like a referral score from customers. But there's so many other things that you can do.
Mm,
Referral rates, net dollar retention,
mm,
really understanding like case studies of your impact studies from your customers, and then
mm,
establishing your business from your customer's perspective versus your own. So that's
mm,
something that I talk about a lot is um, when you talk about selling your product, it's mostly companies will talk about their own product, being like, yeah, our product is great, and we do this and we do that, but they're not talking about the problem that it solves. And that's
mm,
really putting on your customer success hat is, if you can tell me what is the problem that this solves for the customer and how you measure it from their perspective, like what is the success rate that your customer is experiencing, that should
mm,
be your internal KPI.
mm,
So it's sort of like flipping the KPI to be measured by your customer versus you doing it yourself, and that's
mm,
a very difficult thing to do for businesses.
mm. Yeah, definitely. So just in case any of our listeners are not familiar with some of the abbreviations we used, KPIs is key performance indicators, and those are usually used to like track performance. And then I think you used ICP as well. I'm not sure what that is. Do you want to tell
So,
the
so
audience?
ICP, yeah, for sure. And sorry for all of the abbreviation. So, ideal customer profile is what ICP is. And what that means is you're basically establishing who your ideal customer would be as a business, because you don't want to sell to everybody, right? You want to sell to a specific type of customer who is going to actually want your product and is going to benefit from it. So
Okay.
often what happens is when a business is new and a startup is new, they're making a product and they're selling it to whoever will buy it, right? And that makes sense. You're trying to make money. But
Mm,
as the business progresses and grows into a larger organization and becomes more established and structured, one of the
mm,
key things they have to do is establish who their ideal customer profile is, so that they're targeting the right people, they're
mm,
targeting the right customers, and know exactly who to talk to and how to do it. So they streamline that
mm.
process. And
Yeah.
then a third thing I also mentioned was OKRs.
Mm,
So OKRs are similar to KPIs, but
mm,
it stands for objectives and key results.
mm,
So the difference between KPIs, so the KPI is a key performance indicator, so it's an indicator of performance, whereas an OKR is focused on the result.
mm,
So you basically are measuring based on a result versus
mm.
a performance indicator.
Okay. Awesome. Um, and then when it comes to your coaching, I guess how would you define your coaching style? I guess.
I love that question. So I have also evolved as a coach since I started, and I think I'm constantly going to be evolving. I think that's something that everybody should know, is that you're constantly learning in life, right? You should not be stagnant with who you are and where you are, because the moment that you do that, that means that you're falling behind, right? So keep that in mind. Like, always keep learning, always keep growing. So my style as a coach, I would say that I am an empathetic coach for sure. Like, I try to listen and understand from the perspective of whoever's talking to me and who I'm coaching. But I'm also very action oriented. So, I make sure that you have some actionables that will get you your results. So again, OKRs, right? Focusing on your objectives and key results. It's important to have that in mind, because otherwise it can just feel like we had a great conversation and it didn't go anywhere. So
Mm,
I'm very focused on actions, and I will hold you accountable. I
mm,
can be, I can be that person who will be like, have you done this? Have you done that? Right. So
mm,
sometimes that's needed. It just
mm,
depends on how driven the other person is, but I will work with you to make things happen. So I
mm.
don't know if there's like a tagline for it, but maybe like transformative is the
Mm.
word. That's where
Yeah,
I'm sort of trying to get to, transformative
yeah,
coaching.
yeah, yeah. No, then that's amazing. And accountability is definitely so important because,
Yeah.
not only for you, like for others, but for yourself as well. So yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess obviously the coaching industry, or um, you know this market, it is, I would say, very competitive, and then also, quite male dominated, I would say, as well. So, um, as someone who has entered this market, have you faced any kind of challenges, and how did you overcome them?
I mean, challenges every day. But specifically from, the perspective of being male dominated and competition, I think I have, so you'll notice this, right? As a woman, when you start off your career, you'll probably have a lot of people at the same level. As you move up into leadership, you'll find less and less women, which is really sad to see. So I've often been the only woman in a room of executives
Mm,
with men. Sometimes like the topic is just like not of interest as well.
mm,
So they'll be
yeah.
talking about something specific, and you're like, just like, oh, I cannot talk about golf for another moment. But whatever, right? Like, and no offense to golf, like it's
Mm,
a great sport, I'm sure. Not something that I'm interested in. I want to talk about Bollywood dancing, right? So, but that's also just personal to me. Anyway, so not to digress, the
mm,
point is that you will find yourself in rooms where you're the only woman.
mm,
But I think something that I've noticed is that if you can prove logic, right? If you can prove some sort of logic with data that you're coming in with, and you just have a structured way of thinking about it and talking about it, you can probably get through anything.
mm,
And even if people like kind of shut you down or say, oh, that
mm,
that doesn't make sense or whatever,
mm,
you can, if you do enough of it enough
mm,
times, you will just learn that to ignore sort of like the naysayers and push through it, but also
mm,
learn from them, right? So
mm,
a lot of men are also mentors to me, who have been in the industry for a long time, and I think that if they also want to give back. Sometimes they just don't know how, because you're one of the few people in their network that that they don't know how to deal with, right? Like they're like, oh, everybody else in my network is that looks the same as me. So sometimes
mm,
giving them the opportunity to work with somebody like you is actually good for them as well, and I think that's something that you should help them see.
mm,
um, so that's from the male perspective. You can definitely work more collaboratively rather than competitively, and then
mm,
also approaching things from a logical perspective. I think everybody can argue with sentiment, but the
mm,
moment you start to argue with logic, you're gonna fall short, right? And then the other side, where you mentioned competitiveness, yeah, absolutely. Coaching is such a competitive industry. There's a lot of women in coaching as well, especially in the CS world.
mm,
I have a lot of competition in customer success and coaching as well. But again, I'm just going to tell you about my journey a little bit, where in the beginning I had a lot of imposter syndrome, thinking, oh, am I as good a coach as them? Have I done
mm,
enough? They do
mm,
so much. They put out so much content. I don't put a lot of content out there. I'm just letting you know, not yet anyway.
mm,
But what I am really good at, and those are things that I started to realize, is I'm really good at having in-depth discussions with people on one-on-ones and group coaching and sessions, and doing podcasts like these where we really get into answering questions and we have in-depth discussions. So I started to use that as a method of meeting people, coaching people, and I'm trying to do more of that. It's not as scalable, I'll be very honest. So I'm
mm,
probably not doing as well as somebody who's able to reach 10,000 people in a day,
mm,
but I'm happy with the way that I do my coaching, and I feel like I'm able to provide some sort of impact. So that's
mm,
something for you to establish as well, is what are you happy with, right?
mm,
You kind of set your own measures of success. You set your own KPIs and your own OKRs as well. So
mm,
it's important to do that as you get into this industry, where what
mm,
does success mean to you, and how are you able to measure up to it? Because honestly, even right now, from a lot of people's perspective, I would not be successful, right? I'm not
mm,
considered successful. But
mm,
I think I'm considering myself to be successful because I'm setting myself milestones, saying,
mm,
okay, this is what I want to achieve in the next couple of months.
mm,
And I'm meeting those milestones. So that's enough for me. So
mm.
anyway, yeah, so
Yeah,
it's relative, right?
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, defining your own success is definitely something that I would recommend to everyone, because, yeah, that definition, if you're gonna define success, like your own success according to others, it's never gonna be enough. So yeah, that is definitely good advice to like set up your own milestones.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll need help, right? Like you should definitely ask for help. I'm not saying do it in silo or whatever. Just, me on my own being feeling sorry for myself kind of thing, right? But yeah, no, absolutely, help, talk to people who you admire, right? Talk to your competitors who you admire. And you'd be surprised how many people would be willing to speak, to give advice, and really boost up other women. So I love reaching out to other women and men who are looking to help, and just get their advice. And I do the same. I give back as well.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, so when it comes to strategies, are there any critical ones that you believe um, women need who are maybe currently in customer success and leadership roles in startups? So do you believe that there should be some kind of like initiatives or anything like that to help you empower them?
Yeah, so one thing I noticed, when I started coaching, I was coaching very much from the perspective of, okay, this is career coaching. We're not going to delve into the personal side of things. But what I realized is a lot of your blockers in life are going to be from the personal side and not your professional side. What does that mean? You kind of set yourself some limiting beliefs. You'll be like, I don't have time because, I have all of these obligations at home, and you're very busy at home, and then you're stressed out at work, and basically you never have time. So the first thing I would say is you have to carve out time, right? No matter what you're doing, you probably are very busy at home. Everybody is. You have kids, you have all these responsibilities. A lot of women take on more responsibility than men. We already know this. And we kind of like default responsibility also, like if nobody's doing it, fine, I'll do it. So you have to actively set boundaries for yourself, being like, okay, next time this happens, I need to set a boundary for myself so that I'm not taking away from the thing that I need to do. So whatever that time is in a day, whether it's half an hour that you carve out for yourself, an hour, maybe 2 hours on the weekend, whatever works for you, make sure that you are giving yourself active time to grow and develop. Right? That's one thing I would
Mhm,
say. And this is regardless of which field you're in. It's not only for customer success.
mhm,
Um, but do educate yourself on customer success. And then, um, the other side would be basically what I was talking about before, is recognize your form of learning and how you learn and get better at things. Maybe it's from like LinkedIn and posting on social media, or like TikToks. That works for a lot of people. And then for other people who are more introverted, which is something that my brand is about as well, is really about introverts. It's harder to do that, right? It's harder to be out there and putting yourself out there. So
mhm,
just start to have one-on-one conversations with people that you admire, and just ask questions. Be thoughtful about how you reach out to folks. But yeah, take the time to do that. And it might not feel like you're making progress, but even that little bit every day that you carve out and you do these things,
mhm,
you will make progress. It's better than doing nothing, right?
mhm.
So start somewhere, and
Yeah,
just keep going.
yeah, yeah, awesome. Um, and then when it comes to startups, a lot of times something that is very common that everyone hears is finding your niche and your target audience. Um, is there any advice on that you would like to give?
Yeah. So, as in from a business perspective, how to find your niche, or from a personal, like a personal thing, from an individual's
Yeah, I think
perspective?
that's kind of like the kind of struggle is like navigating that where if your passion is something very specific, but you also have to keep in mind that there is a market for it as well,
Yeah.
because obviously you have to make money. So I think finding that balance is sometimes like tricky. So I think that's something that I was like trying to figure out, like, okay, how do you
Yeah.
find that balance? Yeah.
I mean, you might have heard of the concept of ikigai, right? Which is really finding the balance between what you're passionate about, what you can get paid for, what there's a demand for, right? So, I think that that's kind of your ideal scenario, but that is really overwhelmed to look at. initially. You're
Mm,
like, oh my God, I have to do all of these things. So my advice usually is just exactly what I said a few moments ago, is start somewhere, right? Because as you start to do things, you'll
mm,
realize what you're doing wrong, like what's not working and what is working. The process of trial and error really is helpful and
mm,
self-reflective.
mm,
So I do a lot of self-reflection. I take out time for it. I meditate. And I think that is, and I know meditation again can be an overwhelming thing, but really just sit with yourself and just think about things, right? Be like,
mm,
okay, this is what I did. Start to be
mm,
more methodical about it. Don't like spiral into, I mean, it's definitely going to happen the first few times. You'll spiral into things and you're like, I did nothing with my time. But really, if you can sit down and list out the things that are working well, the things that are not working well, the things that you're appreciative,
mm,
the things that, you know, that you feel that from the research that you've done, the market requires.
mm,
Start to document things a little bit better and
mm.
take them one step at a time. And then eventually you can fill out that Ikigai chart.
Yep.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, please look it up. Ikigai, it's
Mm,
such an amazing concept of, you know, what your calling is in life.
mm,
That's what you should be working towards, but it's not something that you can do in a day, right? Rome was
mm.
not built in a day, and neither is your Ikigai. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
start to write things down that, you know, are working, things that you don't feel good about, things that you want to push yourself to do. So sometimes you do need to push yourself to do things that you don't feel good about. That's something I wanted to talk about as well. Is that
Mm,
yes, you will follow your passion, but there are certain things. Not, I'm not saying do unmoral things or whatever, immoral things, but there are certain things that you will need to push yourself to do. If you say, "Oh, I'm not comfortable using a new
mm,
technology or something,"
mm,
well, that is limiting yourself, right? So maybe learn the technology a little bit and just see how it goes,
mm,
pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
mm,
But obviously recognize where the boundaries are and what's like, you know, if something feels really wrong, somebody's abusing you and you're like, okay, I need to shut this down, then that is your instinct. So
mm,
again, I know I've given a very long-winded answer, but your objective is to sort of fill out that ikigai of like where you can find your niche, what you're
mm,
passionate about, what you can get paid for, what you love.
mm,
So if you can find that, that's great. But if you can't, don't stress out about it. Just start filling out one box at a time.
mm.
And you'll eventually get there with trial and error. And
Yeah, I
again,
think
learn from people that have done it before, right? Learn from
yeah.
people who figured it out.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
still
think
figuring out mine. So even though like I feel like I'm preaching about it, I'm not. I haven't
mm,
figured out mine. Like I'm still learning and growing, and I think that's another perspective, right? Don't feel
mm,
like that's the end goal. That's not
mm,
your destination. If you're looking for a job, for example, today, and a lot of people do this, they're like, just help me get a job, and that's what they
mm,
come to me with. I often say no to coaching those people because
mm,
if that's your mindset, I can't help you, right? If
mm.
it's just help me get a job, whatever you do, just help me get a job. There are a
Yeah.
lot of agencies out there that will help you with that. That's not my objective. My objective is to help you grow and learn to the
Mm,
point that you don't have to be stressed out about getting a
mm,
job.
mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's you've made a really good point of like yeah, this is like an ongoing process, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you're gonna, as you said, like do something, fail at something, learn from it, and then maybe like make some changes. And then it's gonna like, you know, it's gonna keep on changing. So, um, yeah, the goal should be to like learn and grow and not really be like, okay, you know, I should have everything figured out.
Yeah, and I feel like you're a perfect example of this, Priya, right? Like you're doing this podcast, you're giving back, and I've gotten so much from just giving back.
Mhm,
I think that's a great place to start is, you know, volunteering, giving back, putting
mhm,
information out there into the world. And sometimes it's a confidence issue because people will be like, well, I don't know what I have to give. I'm the one looking for a job, but you know,
mhm,
trust me, there everybody can learn something from everybody else.
mhm,
So think about what you can do to give back. And then in the process, you'll end up connecting with people that will give you something else in return. And that community
mhm.
gets built. I'm sure you've also experienced this, right? From your through your
Yeah.
podcast and just connecting with people. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, with the podcast, my aim wasn't like, you know, oh, I want to make money or like I want to become famous or something like that. No, it was just like, oh, like I want to learn. And I was like, okay, while I'm learning from people, why not like share things with other people as well? Because um, obviously, you know, I had a mindset maybe a year before of, just as you said, that, oh, like, okay, I'm gonna work at a job. I just need a job because I want to make money. And that's kind of like a very closed mindset I had. And during the time that I did have a job, I wouldn't say, I mean, obviously I am appreciative of that. And, I really loved working at a job, but um, the kind of growing and learning I've done since, leaving my job, it is comparatively like a huge difference. Like nothing compares to that, and it's so surprising to me. I'm in shock.
Yeah, it's such a good
So,
point, and I feel like it's so sad, right? Because when we're young and we're in school, we're constantly learning and growing, and that's the focus. But then the moment we get into the job market, and this is like obviously like it's a higher purpose, and then the systematic problem that we have is
mhm,
that once you get into the job function, it's you kind of stop growing and learning,
mhm,
and you're just grinding on a daily basis. And
mhm,
honestly, like I think you asked me this question before. I feel like I didn't answer this. From the business's perspective, that's something that they should be encouraging is having mentorship at work, having some sort of development and coaching. If you're not doing that as a business, you
mhm,
really need to start thinking about that because good people will leave you, and the people
mhm,
who stay on are like good people like you, right? Are going to leave, and then the people who stay on are basically the people who just like I just want a paycheck, and they're
mhm,
not going to be thinking about the business. They're not going to be thinking about how to make your company better. So if you
mhm,
want to keep the good folks that really work hard and act as entrepreneurs at your business, like as if and treat it as their own, you have to make sure that you're investing in their development.
mhm,
So yeah, no, it's such a great point, right? Like you will eventually just get tired of it.
mhm.
And then you kind of go back to your like, I wish I was at school because like I really want to learn something. But if
Yeah.
you can kind of keep both going, that's the balance that you want, right? It's like I want to be working, but I also want to be developing on a daily basis and learning.
Mhm. Yeah, that's where I feel like there is a gap, and that's why like I appreciate a lot of coaching that is coming on, and a lot of coaching services that are coming on, because I do understand obviously there are manager and leaders in an organization, but they are so overwhelmed with other OKRs, with their own KPIs and all these meetings they have to do every day. They don't have really time to mentor their team members and,
Absolutely.
spend time developing them.
Yeah,
And that's why I feel like, if they have like some kind of outside help, and it's okay to, get other experts out there to, help you out. So, um, if you're able to do that, I mean, that's amazing. I don't think it should be where, oh no, I have to do everything by myself.
absolutely.
Because you're gonna burn out if you're gonna do everything by yourself.
For sure. And that's something I'm learning every day as an entrepreneur. It's really hard to do everything on your own. You need a set of like support system, like partners and people who will vouch for you and be there for you. And even if it's not employees, as you say, as you grow a business, like my business is very small.
Mm,
But it's something that I'm learning is that, without the support system and the mentorship and the coaching that I also get, it's very hard for me to continue on. So yeah,
mm,
absolutely. Look for outside coaching if you're not getting it at work, which, like you said, a lot of people don't.
mm,
Maybe not even your direct manager. Like your manager is obviously going to be busy, like you said.
mm,
There's a couple of things that you can do, and I do advise is that one, when you go into if you have one-on-ones with your manager, when you go into those one-on-ones, you should be prepared because they're not going to come, thinking, oh, let me grow you as a person. Like that's not on their top of their to-do list.
yeah.
You should go in prepared with things that you want to talk about and you want to grow in and go with suggestions and solutions. And so that way it takes the thinking out of their day, your
Mm,
manager's day. And they're like, oh, this person's already come to me with a solution. All I have to do is check it, right?
mm,
And say yes. So that's a lot easier. I'm not saying that you'll always get that check, but it's a
mm,
lot easier for them if you take the processing power out of their day for them to imagine what to
mm,
do for you, where you're like,
mm,
just do this for me and I'll be good, right?
mm,
So that's one thing you can do. That's for at work, but also you can find mentorship from other people at work. One of my previous roles had a really great mentorship program where they would match folks that have nothing to do with each other in the company. So if you can just volunteer as a mentor or a mentee, and you can get both. And then they would just match you up based on what you're looking for. So, for example, I wanted to learn more about marketing, so I got matched up with somebody who was like a senior leader in marketing.
Mhm.
So that had nothing to do with my role, though. And then I was also mentoring somebody else who was looking to learn more about customer success. So same thing,
Mhm.
right? And your company might not have that program. You can definitely ask them to build it into the system. But if they don't have it, you can always look outside, like you said. Outside coaching and mentorship is always helpful because you can also get an unbiased view of how things are going for you. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
and
a strong
yeah,
believer.
yeah, and even as a manager, if you feel like, you have a team and you're like, oh, okay, I definitely want to help develop my team, but I don't have the time, definitely get like outside help. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe it's like, for a couple of workshops you want to do for your team or something like that. So even that is super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, any sort of like bonding time or the space that you give your team to think outside of the box will be helpful. I
Mm,
know a lot of people say, oh, but then it was just like a boot camp, and then we're not able to apply what happened afterwards. That is kind of your responsibility as
mm,
well. So
mm,
whatever you do, make sure that you are kind of thinking, okay, how do you keep this going and keep it sustainable as a manager?
mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So when it comes to, your venture, what is your vision for the future?
Ah, great question. I'm just trying things. I'm just trying every day. I'm learning and trying things. No, so I think that the one of the key visions is I really want to democratize mentorship and coaching
Mm,
in the field of GTM and customer success. That is one of my key goals. Coaching can get very expensive, and I should know one-on-one coaching can get very expensive from both sides, right? From the perspective of the coach and the perspective of the coachee. But I think that if we can create some sort of system, which is a community mentorship and more self-paced, in a way that you're getting a little bit of one-on-one time, but also group and also like different forms of mentorship. That is my vision. Is that we can all help grow each other in a way that's more affordable. So that's the long term vision. But also, I'm hoping that I can contribute to some sort of change in the GTM space, where we're starting to think more from the customer's perspective versus our own product's perspective in our silos.
mm,
So yeah, those are my two consulting and coaching goals.
amazing. Um, and then obviously we have talked a lot about, challenges and those kind of things. But I like to end the podcast with like gratitude or thankfulness, I guess. So can you share a few things about yourself that you're proud of?
Proud of. Keep your health in check. I'm, no, seriously, like we talk about all of these things, and at the end of the day, you'll put in all this effort and you'll just get sick and then you won't be able to do anything. So, I've definitely had, ups and downs with my health. So I think one of the things that I would say is, I'm proud of starting to focus a little bit more on my mental health and physical health. Um, but yeah, and that's just my advice to everybody in general. Um, but I think in terms of being proud, like try something, try to make some move, as I said before, because doing something is better than doing nothing. Even if you feel like it's two steps forward, one step back, you're still moving one step forward. So yeah, those are sort of my final thoughts.
Amazing. That's beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, as I said, starting a venture in itself, and just having the courage, and that in itself is something to be proud of. And
Thank you.
obviously, the whole journey is full of ups and downs, but you have made it so far, and you will continue to grow and learn and be successful. And then
As will you.
obviously.
We're gonna make you famous. You were saying that you're not yet famous. You're gonna be famous.
I hope to, so that I can make other women like you famous as well.
You're so sweet. We all uplift each other. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I hope that the listeners have gained something from this, have learned from this, and I hope after listening to this, you've been inspired, and hopefully, these advice or recommendations that Bhumika shared would be helpful. Um, and we will definitely, keep an eye on you and, share your progress as we go ahead. But again, thank you for coming on the podcast and all the best.
Thank you so much. Same to you. And I hope this has been helpful to anyone. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and hopefully we can chat sometime soon again.
Yeah. And I will definitely share the website link and your LinkedIn profile as well. So if anyone wants to connect, they can go to the link and click on it and just connect with you as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Priya. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.